Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast where we discover movies that other people think are good because they won the Best Picture. And we are talking about this week, The Silence of the Lambs. It's from 1991. It is a quite the interesting movie. A little bit frightening here and there, I will say. I was a little frightened at points. Interesting movie. A good start for Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. A lot of stuff to talk about here. But first, let's recap what happened last week. A little tragedy in Timo-land. Lawrence of Arabia only ended up at place number 9. That's pretty good, actually.
Oh, boo fucking who.
Only number 9.
Only number 9. It's a
You
great
weenie.
it's a great big long episode. I highly recommend you go listen to it. Some interesting stuff here and there about a movie, Old Larry of Arabia. But today, The Silence of the Lambs. What do you guys think about this movie? I mean, Tanner, you've seen this movie more than once, correct?
I've seen this 2 times.
Okay, 2 times. And I want to know, let's just start off. I have a special question for you. What did you notice this time on the second watch that you didn't notice on the first time? Well, we're going to dive right into the nitty-gritty, I think.
Oh, into the nitty-gritty. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what this movie is about. There's a guy, he eats people, Jodie Foster's a cop, and they have to begrudgingly work together. We're done here. That's the synopsis done.
It's a great buddy cop movie.
Exactly. Much like Ride Along.
Yeah. Many cinematic parallels.
Oh my god,
Anyway.
let's talk about the movie.
Okay, we're getting into the movie. Timo, I'll answer your question because I actually do have like a thesis statement about this film.
Okay.
And I think the word that describes Silence of the Lambs is confident. This is a very confident movie in all of its regards.
That's a thesis word. Sorry.
In the directing, in the performances, I think this movie exudes confidence on all sides from a production standpoint, despite the fact that our main character, Special Agent Clarice Starling, sort of has some deep inset insecurities that she's not so confident about, which she overcomes in this film.
There you go. Okay, now that Tanner has given his thesis, let's have some thoughts from the rest of you guys. Abram, you wanna
Yeah,
lay it on
sure.
me?
So I've also seen this film twice. And when I was watching it, I kind of forgot how fucking depraved this movie is.
Oh, yeah.
There is some really reprehensible material in Silence of the Lambs. But the reason I love this movie so much, the reason I love this movie so much, and I was thinking about this as I was lazing in my grandparents' pool this morning, is that you could put a laugh track over Silence of the Lambs as is, and it'd be a very funny movie. What I love about Silence of the Lambs is that it's a very, very campy film that plays itself completely straight. And that creates this really great, I think, theme and tone throughout the entire film, which kind of juxtaposes the absolutely obscene and horrifying stuff with moments that are subtly comedic or overtly comedic. And there's a great claustrophobia to the film, obviously excellent performances and writing. Upon a second watch, I think that the plot in the third act gets a little bit too convenient, and I certainly want to talk about whatever the hell they're going for with Buffalo Bill. But on the whole, I think this is a really special film.
There you go, Tucker.
I watched this movie a long time ago. I believe it was a double feature for me with A Clockwork Orange. I had a theme going that day. I was sick. I was
Sure.
home from school, and I just had to.
Oh, you were sick, all right.
I had to get through really 2 messed up movies in one day. But honestly, watching this so many years later, and obviously thinking about it in the format of Quest, I realized mostly how much that I had really forgotten about the movie. I mean, I remembered Anthony Hopkins' performance. I remembered that Jodie Foster was a cop and some of the general things about it. But on this rewatch, the thing that stood out most to me is how greatly they go into the detail of the investigation, of the FBI nonsense that's going through their heads, and they're working through each step of figuring out what each clue means and analyzing what Lecter is saying. And I found that to be really fascinating. And honestly, it all passed me by when I watched this like 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow. So this actually, I'm the odd one out. This is the first time I'd seen this movie. Partly because as a movie watcher, I'm easily scared. I find movies that have a small amount of tension in them to be frightening. And so this movie, which has not a small amount, quite a lot, some very intense scenes here and there, and no real jump scares or anything, but just good tense horror-like, horror adjacent. I wouldn't necessarily call this a horror film. But for the most part, it took me a couple pauses here and there. I'm watching it on my computer, so I have the liberty to pause it when I feel a little frightened, and I can, if I want to, go and take a walk around the room. But I enjoyed it as well. And I think, Tanner, I agree with you in that your assessment of this film is fairly confident in what it's going for, because there's some very interesting choices filmmaking-wise that I think paid off, and I think we'll get to talk about them going down the road. But let's just start here going over in general with this. I mean, the story and like what are you getting out of the theme of this film and whatnot, because I'm not sure I've internalized what the film is saying to me yet. I just finished it not that long ago, so I'm still kind of thinking and mulling it over. But for you guys who've seen it more than once, what does it say to you when the end credits roll?
So for me, if I can hop in ahead of you, Tucker. Yep. Actually, it's funny I'm hopping in here ahead of you because I want to respond to what you said in your opening. I had also watched this film several years ago when I thought it was real edgy watching Silence of the Lambs, right? And watching it the second time now, unlike you, I actually remembered it almost beat for beat because I think the film is very striking, and you really become captivated in the surface level plot of these characters of trying to catch Buffalo Bill. But upon my second watch, as I remembered the plot and how it moves, I was able to get a little bit deeper into the comparatively subtle but still fairly overt sort of conversation about sexism you could say it's just in policing, but I think you can extrapolate that out to basically any workplace. So I think the film has more to say on that front. I think it's a little bit confused on what it's trying to say, perhaps about like mental health and various things. I think that the film basically washes its hands of all of that, for better or for worse. And so going into the film thematically, I think the only thing you can really get a good read on is the way Clarice is put at a disadvantage by those around her, and the way that she has a chip on her shoulder personally and professionally to catch Bill. And that's kind of what I honed in on the second time around.
Yeah, I mean, I entirely agree. What I was going to grab onto with the theme of the movie, I think for me is sexism, masculinity, power struggles, how those all feed into society, into culture, into professional workplaces, and because most shots of this movie feed into that theme. When two people are having a conversation, 99.9% of the time it's going to be Jodie Foster and a man who's in a position of power above her or mentally above her. She holds her own very well against Hannibal Lecter, but we all know that he's the one who really has control of the situation because he's so confident in his psychoanalysis and all that. And the way that they shoot those scenes, a lot of head-on people staring into the camera, really makes you unnerved. And I think that's one of the most confident aspects of the filmmaking, is how essentially every single conversation is just people staring straight into the camera. And that struck me really early on. I kept noticing it throughout. And the way that Clarice interacts with everyone and eventually is able to sort of gain her own confidence. I mean, she has confidence in the beginning, but she's able to like say, hey, all you like hoedown cops, get the heck out of here. Like, I'm the big cheese here. You guys need to listen to me. Is one of those moments where, like, okay, now she's really showing that she is confident. She does know what she's talking about, even though everyone around her sort of doubts that because of her gender. So yeah, those sequences throughout the movie, I think, point pretty clearly to me, aside from mental health issues, that masculinity, sexism, power struggles, those are the main focus of the film.
Tucker, I'd like to bounce off something that you said there about the way that Jonathan Demme, the director, he films these sequences, these conversations, by having his actor, framed right in the middle, blurred everything around them. He's forcing the audience to lock in most of the time on Anthony Hopkins. That's where the most striking, like, middle of the frame conversation, soliloquies, if you will, monologues happen. And that feeds into my statement about how confident this film is from a filmmaking perspective. Jonathan Demme has to be extremely confident in his own directing, and the audience will be right in that sweet spot of being unnerved but also engaged in the story enough, especially with those Anthony Hopkins performance pieces. And Jonathan Demme and the actors, Jonathan Demme has to be confident in his actors, and the actors have to be confident within themselves to be staring down the barrel of this camera, delivering these very intense line deliveries, and just absolutely nailing them, but also coming across like they are having a conversation even though we're doing a shot reverse shot in this directing style.
Yeah, well, you mentioned unnerving, and my thing that I wanted to talk about later, which we'll talk about now, is the way a lot of conversations are shot. Tucker, you brought it up, how they're shot very frontally. Characters look right down into the camera. Sometimes it's a little high angle, and I was going to say that the film is not shot with coverage. They didn't just cover the scenes. They shot each frame. It was very intentional. How are we going to shoot this so that it is creating this very unnerving, very unsettling effect that we get? It's it's most noticeable with Anthony Hopkins, but it pervades the film. It starts at the very beginning. I noticed it right away once I started watching it. With Jack Crawford,
the first scene of Clarice showing up in Crawford's office, he's just looking straight into the camera, and then you get back to her, and she's staying straight into the camera, and I'm like, whoa, okay. It makes sense for the occasional insert in other movies, but this movie uses that as its entire directorial style in terms of how it shoots its conversations.
Yeah, the visual language of the film is established in those normal scenes, and normal scenes where we're not talking to total crazy people. And so then once we are, it is heightened, I think. And I find that very interesting and brave. It's a brave choice to shoot it like that, because that's not really how you traditionally should shoot a scene of talking between two characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, if you think about it on the whole, using the exact same kind of shot for conversations in a movie that is pretty dialogue heavy, it's not entirely, there's a lot of exploring spooky locations and traveling to different places to find clues and things of that nature, but a lot of this movie is dialogue, and in other movies where the dialogue and performances aren't as riveting, you would get bored really quickly if there was no shot diversity. But because you are, and I think we can all agree on this, invested in the conversations and unnerved by them because of the performances, it doesn't get stale.
Sure.
I think what makes it work, if I can hop on that point for a second, is the script. And the script is a big reason for me why the film works. Because it's written basically it's a series. The best scenes are basically non sequiturs. When we're getting these really chilling things out of Lecter, maybe to the senator about breastfeeding her daughter, or we're getting the ways that the conversations with him and Clarice become almost nonlinear as they're jumping back in time in her life and everything. The fact that it's not written especially straight makes these sequences so effective, because you have no clue what these characters are going to say next. And you could have filmed them. They could have been standing all the way over there in the frame instead of all the way up here, and the scenes would have been just as compelling, because ultimately I don't think it's the camera work that makes these work. It's what the characters are saying and how they're delivering it, in my perspective. So we don't talk a lot about scripts usually when you're here on Quest, so I really wanted to highlight that.
Yeah. I wanted to, if I can pivot the conversational, if I can take the steering wheel here, I wanted to talk about Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling and the character and the performance, because I think while Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter is certainly the most iconic from this, Jodie Foster is our main character, so I think it's fitting to start with her. You guys talked about her a little bit, about how she's like this focus of, sexism and maybe like not this.
You got it. I believe in you.
What's the word I'm looking for here? People underestimate her. I'm underestimating her because thank you, brain. People underestimate her as this special agent in the training in the FBI, and I think she is a really great character in the fact that she has to overcome that. She has to overcome internal internal lack of confidence within herself, and some trauma that she experienced in the past. And then also she has to basically have a battle of the minds with Hannibal Lecter to get where she wants to go. And I think Jodie Foster balances all these and juggles all these very well. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think all of that points back to what we were just talking about is the dialogue. And of course it is the performances as well. But the reason that you're able to get such a good handle on Clarice as a character, and to some degree Hannibal Lecter as a character as well, is because their conversations with one another are so psychoanalysis, next level big brain, that you're learning about each of their personalities through each of the things that they're saying. of course, Hannibal Lecter is psychoanalyzing her through every question that he asks her, and every analysis of what things that she said, and the movements that she's making. But that's also reflected in the actual movements that Jodie Foster is making. Her character is shown through that, and then it's externalized through the dialogue, and the way that all plays through learning about both characters through each line of dialogue with one another makes both of those performances more compelling and interconnected in a way that you don't really get a lot of characters. You know, you get a lot of conversations between characters in movies, believe it or not. But this one, there's such a focus on the two of them battle of the witsing and analyzing each other and trying to say, okay, this is what she's thinking, this is what he's thinking. You are able to learn not only about them as a character, but the other one. It's all mushed up in a nice stew, and I really like that.
I also think she's the only person in the movie. I think every other major character is a caricature.
Snake people? Aliens? No.
What I mean is, Clarice, her plot is very human. The way she performs is very human. She is someone to identify with. Everybody else is some kind of caricature. Like, I love Clifton, who is just this maniacal, self-centered doctor. That's what he is. He's one-dimensional. I'm not saying this is an insult, but to say that she is the only person surrounded by personas, which centralizes, I think, where she sits in the film narratively and thematically. Tucker, I know I said persona, don't worry about it. But I don't read Buffalo Bill or Anthony Hopkins as anything other than larger-than-life, really campy villains. And I think that's part of the reason why the film works. And like I said at the top, it is very campy, but it plays itself straight because you have the anchor of Clarice. So when Anthony Hopkins is like slurping into the camera because he's eating a guy with chianti and fava beans, it feels grounded because Clarice is the one being slurped at. And I think that is really smart writing and execution.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's
slurping.
extremely unnerving, sequence there with that lets you into the mind of Hannibal Lecter and shows you the power that Anthony Hopkins has in his performance. You know, I think that Jodie Foster is very good, but is outshined by Anthony Hopkins as, that's a real hot take, right? Anthony Hopkins is very good in this movie. He's very, very good, and it really comes across what this just crazy, very smart but very, very deranged person that he is, and he's in the cell locked up, and he just wants to get out, but he's a layered character, and I find it very interesting to see how he talks and what Tucker, you said that you liked the questions and going back and forth, and I like seeing how Lecter asked that kind of stuff, and I found myself trying to figure out what his deal was as he's trying to figure out what Clarice's deal is.
Yeah. I think actually one of the things that I was going to say is that off of what you were saying about him wanting to escape and all this, is for me, a lot of the intrigue of his character is he is so deranged that it's not clear that he wants to escape. He's got that, you can see it's percolating in the back of his mind, but it's not shown through any of his actions until 3/4 of the way through the movie. You get one, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful and well-crafted scenes we've seen in the entire run here of Best Pictures. His escape sequence from the courthouse with the cops coming in, and he's 5 steps ahead of them every single time, and it's paced really well, and you get constant reveals and twists in this one sequence. It's so well done and so uncomfortable and so riveting that it's the clear highlight of the movie for me. And honestly, even though this is not my favorite movie that we've seen so far, I think this might be my favorite single scene or sequence that we've seen in this entire run.
Yeah, I think just seeing that scene unfold is really something to behold when, he cuts the guy, even the part where he cuts the guy's face off, places it on himself, hides the body on top of the elevator so the police think it's him, but he's actually being brought out on a stretcher wearing another cop's face. He takes it off and he attacks the guy in the ambulance, and that's how he makes his getaway. On top of the initial breakout itself, it is just very engaging and very well written and well edited, and it's really something to behold in this film.
And it upholds that he's a super smart guy. I
Yes.
think it's very fitting. It works.
I think that's why the film works, because you don't have to be a dumb film snob who cares about any of the stuff we were talking about to enjoy this movie.
No.
Yeah.
I think the very best pictures have that blockbuster quality about them where they are just goddamn compelling stories that unfold in a way that captivates their audience.
Yeah.
You don't need to care at all about the camera being that close when you're in these incredibly elaborate and unfolding sequences. And that's why I think the film is so fun. For as harrowing as it is a fun watch because it is constantly unpredictable. It is constantly and cleverly subverting our expectations. Of course, the raid at the end of the film with, Bill is about to go kill the girl at the bottom of the well, but his bell is going off and the SWAT team is raiding, and then it cuts and the door opens and it's Clarice instead. It just does a great job playing with its audience and being a smart piece of Kino, if I'm using that word properly,
yes.
but also just a really enjoyable, serial killer thriller. And I think that's so great.
The film toys with you the same way that our protagonist Clarice is being toyed with, by Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah. I mean, there are obviously those layers there, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Abram, you brought up that scene there at the end. That's some masterful editing. We're cutting back and forth between what we don't know is two different locations, but it looks like they're the same. That's some good Eisenstein montage theory happening right there. We connect them because they're putting together.
Oh my god.
And yeah,
That's a
we
montage cinema reference.
Film history!
We were just saying don't.
Here we just talked
film
about
snob.
how.
We're
no,
back to
but you don't need to.
montage.
You don't need to know all of the technical terms for why it works, but it does. That's my point.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah,
is that
absolutely.
I buy into it. I'd actually seen that scene before, but I'm like, oh yeah, oh okay, the SWAT team's about to go in, and then like, oh, nope.
No.
And then there's
Well, I think
there's the line
it's
where,
not just great because it's using those classic editing techniques, but because it's just a compelling twist. It keeps you riveted up, like oh shit, it's about to happen, and then it releases that tension by building more tension. You get the reveal that it's actually Clarice there, and you're like, oh okay, so they're not catching him. So okay, what does this mean? Oh wait, then it ramps it up even more.
You have to completely rewire the tension wires that were being formed in your brain.
Yeah.
If I may bring, we've been overall very positive about this film. If I may bring out one negative that I noticed on this rewatch, and this may be just personal preference, or if you fellas agree with me, I will come down harder on my opinion because they're very fluid, and I can drop it at like a hot potato. I sort of had an issue with really just how compelling the Hannibal Lecter stuff was. And we spent a lot of time on that with that escape sequence in that entire sort of segment of the film that I felt like we neglected the Buffalo Bill storyline for a long time, even though that is what is driving the narrative of the film. I think the director or maybe the writer might have gotten too caught up in this this very fantastic Clarice Starling Hannibal Lecter relationship and her finding the clues to figure out how to get this psychoanalysis of Buffalo Bill out of Lecter, that we actually ignored the narrative of the film for too long. But what did you guys think?
I mean, I think you're right. I think it comes down to a menagerie of factors. Mostly that the most interesting part of this film isn't that it's a great FBI story, but is that the FBI is using the villain of the film to capture another villain. That like the begrudging team up there is so compelling because you don't see that very often, and that's what makes this film so unique. So I think they knew that the most important part, the thing that was making the film more interesting, more unique, was the relationship between Clarice and Lecter. And the Buffalo Bill stuff, I think, got, in my opinion, just enough to where I was always in the back of my mind, okay, this is the goal, but it wasn't as interesting. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It is the plot of the movie, technically, and you could make cuts of this movie, of this story. It would be less interesting, where it's just Clarice going after Buffalo Bill, or it's just her talking to Hannibal Lecter. Those would both be interesting stories, but I think the fact that they converge, and there are the layers there, and you do get the idea of the FBI having to use the knowledge of a madman to capture a madman, is what makes this film so interesting. So while the B plot, which is the A plot, whatever, is neglected in some cases, I don't think it really matters too much, because you still get quite a bit of Buffalo Bill, especially as you reach that third act.
Tanner, You made a critical error because you gave me an opportunity to talk about one of my favorite films of all time, Jaws, and
my God.
I think that Buffalo
That's
Bill
always
is
an error.
handled in the same way as the shark. And what I mean is that the less you see of Buffalo Bill, the better. Kind of like how you see in this sort of aftermath of Jaws killing people, you see the really great cuts to Buffalo Bill's like weird sex butterfly dungeon, and I think
moths.
that. Sorry, my apologies. I think that
They're the Death's Head moths.
Great point.
That's
the
some
way that the
Ento
film,
nerd stuff. Sorry, I don't mean
Yes.
to keep stepping on you here.
It's all good because the way that the film feeds you little bits of Buffalo Bill and then reveals him at the end feels very smart, feels very deliberate. I don't think Buffalo Bill could sustain the sort of intrigue that Hannibal does, and I think that's partially because as soon as Buffalo Bill opens his mouth, I'm a little bit shaky on him, and I want to discuss that. But I think saving him until the end and only giving you teases, kind of building up who is this man as we're learning about him alongside Clarice, is very effective. Especially when you're put in the same position as Clarice when she realizes, oh my God, that's Buffalo Bill in front of me in this kitchen right now.
Yeah.
I am suddenly in this position, and now the audience is suddenly in the position with her. I think it's effective.
Yeah, sure.
I pretty much agree with you, Tanner, but I kind of find a little twist in my feelings about it is that I'm a little disappointed when we leave Hannibal Lecter. We were with him, and I find him, him and Clarice are the most interesting parts of the film, and it's this very engaging what's happening. We were introduced to these rules, and these rules of interacting with him make it so that there's constant tension when the characters are together. Oh, is something bad going to happen? And so after he escapes, then and he doesn't really, he drops a couple hints here and there, but they're not that connected to what we're seeing and being told about what Clarice is thinking and how she's going about solving it. And so then it kind of just skips to she's like lucked into it or solved it. It's a little convenient that she goes to the exact house that that Buffalo Bill is living at, even when it's sort of explained. I didn't find the explanation for why he's there, and it's super, super compelling. So I'm a little, he gets his reprisal at the very, very end of the film. But once Hannibal Lecter leaves, I'm a little, I feel a little part of me has gone away because I'm like, oh, I want to see more of this guy because he's so fucked up.
Then,
Yeah,
Timo,
I
you should
agree.
watch the sequels to this film. Hannibal, I think, is the sequel because Red Dragon is a prequel to this.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Timo, and this is what I was mentioning at the beginning about the plot in the third act feeling convenient to me. I think that like I said, I like the broad strokes of Bill being saved, right? But I think the way that Clarice shows up in the town and then happens to find like the sexy photographs in the little music box, and then manages to get to the closet, and then all of a sudden is in with Bill, and then Bill didn't pull the hammer on his pistol in a different room. If he had done that, he would have killed Clarice, and the film would have just ended. My problem with the last probably 15 minutes or so, while I think that there is just a disgusting amount of tension in the room when he cuts the lights and it comes up in night vision, it's a beautiful sequence. The specifics of how we mechanically moved from these houses into the basement and then how she manages to kill him does feel convenient in a way that takes away a little bit of the immersion of the rest of the film.
Sure.
I think the convenience that you're feeling there, and I do agree. I don't necessarily think it's too much of a bad thing. It didn't really hinder my experience at all. But it's because for the vast majority of the film, you're getting clues and setups and payoffs for the track of the trail of the serial killer so slowly that you're able to get a lot of time to really dig into, okay, why does she know this? Why is she sharing this information with people? What is Lecter thinking? What information is he giving her that she has to figure out? And you get so much time with those that by the end of the movie, when you have to pick up the pace to get her to the location, that they're bam, 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 okay, clue, 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 no time to dwell on them, it does feel a little bit out of place for the tone that they've set up for the most of the movie. And I think because it's so much of the movie where that is the tone and that stuff works so well. I mean, getting clues and hints of Buffalo Bill and hearing about the different murders and seeing the photographs, that sequence of, or no, wait, hold on. I'm actually thinking of the prequel to this film, Manhunter, which we watched last night. By the way, a little film nerd information. This is a sequel. This is a sequel to Manhunter, directed by Michael Mann, which we did watch last night. But seeing all this stuff that is related to Buffalo Bill, but not the person for the most part, keeps that tension and keeps it in the back of your mind in a way that's like, okay, we're really following Clarice here. We're really following what she knows, the things that, and you're not giving a ton of evidence on the other side to be able to stay one step ahead of the character. You know a few things, but they're really just shown as setup so the end sequence makes more sense. And I think that's one of the reasons why it works so well, is because you do get a lot of cuts to the villain and conversations with the villain, but not the main villain, which is, I think, a really interesting way to structure the film.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find it too particularly upsetting that things move quickly at the end. The film is carried by other aspects in that part. I am not really thinking about that. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm scared. We are in a freaky sex moth dungeon, and this poor woman's in.
Thank you for using the correct Lepidopteran terminology.
We're in this woman is in the girl is in the well, and I'm like, oh, freaking out about that, and so that last sequence is good for other reasons. I think
Sure.
Yes, maybe Buffalo Bill could have killed Clarice earlier, but at the same time, it's really tense the whole time, so I'm not upset by it very much.
Sure. Well, boys, we've been singing the praises of this film for so long that I've neglected to drop in any trivia or awards from this film.
All right.
So it's time. It's time for a trivia dump. So here we go.
Trivia dump.
This first one. First of all, I'll just start off with the awards because it feeds into my first bit of trivia. This film is the last film, at least in the last 30 years, to win the Big Five at the Oscars. That is, of course, Best Picture, Best Actor in a Leading Role, Anthony Hopkins, Best Actress in a Leading Role, Jodie Foster, Best Director, Jonathan Demme, and Best Adapted Screenplay by Ted Talley. It was also nominated for Best Sound and Best Film Editing. And it is among only two other films to win the Big Five. It Happened One Night and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And a little bit more Oscar trivia here. Anthony Hopkins only has 24 minutes and 52 seconds of screen time, making him the second shortest performance to win Best Leading Actor in a film.
Good gravy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been thinking a lot recently about how screen time doesn't feel like actual screen time when you're watching a film. Like actors in movies don't actually have as much like physical time on the screen as their impact on you might make you think. And I think this is probably the ultimate example of that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a 2-hour movie, and I think it's the perfect length. It's really well paced. It never drags. You never feel like, okay, this could be shorter, this could be longer. I wish this was cut, whatever. But the fact that only less than a quarter of it is spent on the guy that is the most impactful and the most iconic from this film is insane. And I think to the credit of Anthony Hopkins is why that performance is so iconic. Is even in that short amount of time, he gives one of the most iconic performances of film history.
Yes.
And that's just really impressive.
Anthony Hopkins, speaking of him, he improvised that teeth sucking thing that he does. His little thing there.
Yeah.
And he also improvised when he mocks, in their first conversation, when he mocks Jodie Foster's Southern accent, he improvised that as well.
He only does that for like one sentence or something.
Yeah. And this film also received some funding from the FBI, and they were able to film out on the actual FBI training grounds in Quantico, as the FBI thought that it would be a recruitment tool for more female FBI agents. And they were right. Female FBI agent recruitment did receive a boost after this film.
Yeah, the film is pretty friendly to the FBI. It shows them as pretty much overall saviors and whatnot, which, whatever, that's fine, I guess.
It's good when the FBI catches horrible serial killers, actually.
Catching serial killers is a good thing.
Believe it or not.
Well, I mean, they are shown as the heroes because in this situation they are against what is the dregs of humanity, as we're seeing here. But they aren't flawless. I mean, seeing the ways that Crawford doesn't handle his job perfectly, or that Chilton, not related to the FBI, but these people in power aren't flawless, and on the whole they actually are not great people. I mean, as Abram said, their characters, Clarice really being the only person that has that fully rounded human personality. They're heroes, but they're not flawless, and I think that's that's a good balance for that.
Mm-hmm. One thing I didn't get to mention, I wanted to mention it when we were talking about Clarice, is that, and another aspect of the thematic meaning of this film is, I think her obsession in this film is very much interesting as well. She is so involved in sort of overcoming this trauma and proving herself, not only to her fellow FBI agents, but to herself, to overcome that trauma that she received when her father was killed, that she pursues this tracking down of clues put down by Hannibal Lecter to a dangerous extent. I mean, she receives explicit instructions not to sort of engage with him on any sort of emotional level or, even like hand him things. But she breaks those because she is so dead set on her goals. And I think that's another interesting wrinkle to her character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, I can't let us get away with it. I gotta ask Buffalo Bill, what do we think of him? Because he is important, and we've skirted around him. And for me, I think that Buffalo Bill as a boogeyman is much more compelling than Buffalo Bill who does anything. He feels a little bit bumbling to me. I'm not sure that I really like his character a lot. I'm not sure I believe that he is the serial killer that he is framed as. When you see him, like the mesmerizing and haunting sequence of him like putting on the like the nipple ring and like dancing and all of this, it builds up this fucking wacko who I don't think really translates when you hear him talk. When again, he's completely bumbling when Clarice is in there, when he doesn't really know how to handle her when she's at the door. All of these things, I just don't quite know, and I don't know if that performance is that compelling to me. I think who he is not commensurate to how he's performed.
I sort of read it as maybe they didn't have room. I think they really wanted to juxtapose him and Hannibal Lecter. Like he can get away with these things, and he sort of lays out these bodies apparently in a certain order to be found. It's from a line in the film, I think. But he's certainly not as like conniving as Hannibal Lecter is, and I think that is on purpose, just to really elevate Anthony Hopkins' performance.
Sure.
Most of my problem with Buffalo Bill is not in his performance, and it's what his character says. I really find the Buffalo Bill character to be not only, well, it's kind of transphobic nowadays. Not kind of, it is. I don't think it paints this very good narrative of trans people and of the struggle that they face, and it pushes that towards a violent end of which has been this long history of people violently attacking trans people for their transness and then using that as like defense. It's like bad stuff basically, and I find that the film kind of takes this very, it uses outdated language and whatnot, whatever. The film is not made today. And so, but like what it actually says about Buffalo Bill being trans, having some sort of dysphoric element to his personality, wanting to be a woman, but going through this very, gruesome process of doing that. And I find it uncomfortable and kind of disingenuous to, I have trans friends. I don't want them to feel, bad about that or, feel like they're in danger because people would associate a trans person with this Buffalo Bill horrible character. It's not like a complete deal breaker for me on the movie as a whole, but it is a point that I like to think about.
Right. It's important to acknowledge those things, especially about, even though this film isn't that old in the grand scope of Best Picture winners, about older films and the representation in those cases.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have a huge amount of issues with Buffalo Bill as a character. I mean, I think the fact is that a lot of the power of that killer and the reason that the character feels so intimidating is because it's off screen. Shown off screen, you don't have a ton of screen time for Buffalo Bill until the end of the movie, and because you learn about him through those clues, I don't find it particularly underwhelming or upsetting or whatever that the character doesn't hold up to it, because what we're framing here is the narrative of a killer that they can't catch. They don't know anything about Buffalo Bill as a person. They just know that he's one step ahead of them. He's been doing these crazy things, and it's built up in your mind that, okay, this is, someone that's just as conniving, just as crazy as Hannibal Lecter. But in reality, it's because they don't know who Buffalo Bill is as a person that when you come to see the actual person, that it's like, oh, okay, this is a little bit weird. But I think that was probably intentional. Is essentially him not standing up to your expectations of what you want the villain to be. And I think that doesn't make it perfect, but it makes it an interesting way to read it, of tall tales, and then it not necessarily, he's not the legendary perfect killer that it was built up the whole time.
Yeah.
Sure.
We talked about this film a lot in broad strokes. I want to shout out a few little things. The first line that we ever get as a hint towards Hannibal Lecter before we even see him is a great line, and a powerful line and a powerful introduction to his character, which is when he's talking about how he almost escaped like 10 years ago or whatever, and he attacked this nurse, and there's the line, his pulse never went over 85, even while eating her tongue, which is a great, intimidating line before you even see this even more intimidating figure.
Yeah, Hannibal Lecter is a terrifying character. He's just utterly terrifying.
Is that the shot with the red lights on the guy's face?
Yes, I think that is one.
Yeah, as they're just entering the cell block where Hannibal Lecter is being held, the lights go boom, and they switch to red, and it's shown in silhouette of this guy's face as he's delivering this harrowing tale of this serial killer, and it's oh, this worked. All the filmmaking elements are fuddling to this one experience here, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Or what about the wide shot when they discover the guy who's been disemboweled and strung up from the ceiling by Hannibal? That's a nuts shot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's backlit, and it's great.
Some of the sets are pretty incredible in this film, especially that second holding cell that Lecter is put in.
Oh yeah. Just the cage in the middle of the ballroom.
In the middle, that's crazy. It's
and the storage unit with all the stuff in it, with the light that may or may not have inspired the Tucker Hazel 2019 classic Time Bomb. A little bit of cluttered garage, some flashlights shining. You know what I'm saying?
I also just love Anthony Hopkins' pronunciation of words. My favorite is how he says FBI all the way to the FBI. It's great. Yeah. That's just how he says words in this film. I love it.
All right. Well, should we punch in a number here?
I think so.
Let's do it.
It's time, boys.
Let's do it. All right. I am typing away. I've punched in and I'm ready to hit enter. Are you guys ready to hit enter?
Too.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Boom. All right. We've punched in the numbers and we've got ourselves an average. Are you ready for it? It's 9.1. So pretty high up there. Cracked the 9.0. And just a little quick hint. Well, not a quick hint. It actually is going to end up at place number 6. So cracking the top 10 in between The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and You Can't Take It With You. Among pretty good company up here.
Yes.
And on the very top of our list, we liked it quite a lot. And so I've got the point breakdown. I want to hear a quick little phrase about what went into inspiring that number. So Tucker, you're at the top, 9.7. That's what you gave it. What's your reasoning for that?
I just think that this film, among the many that we've seen that has risen to a godlike status in film history, this is one of the ones that is considered, the top of film history. And I think that it's also one of those ones, as Abram was saying, that has that mainstream wide appeal. It's just a great mystery movie to watch for fun, without the eyes of and lens of film history or film analysis, whatever. And I think because it strikes that middle ground so perfectly, in my opinion, it makes it one of the best picture winners. It's phenomenal on all the scales that you can mark it on. Filmmaking, writing, performances, set design, whatever, all of those. It's also a great mainstream entertaining story that anyone can watch. And I just found it to be almost flawless. I mean, I don't have any negative points written down on my page here. So I don't know. I really think that it deserves that high of a slot, and I'm honestly surprised that I'm the one who put it the highest, because I mean, maybe I'm just so confident in my opinion, but I expected us all to be this high on it.
Yeah, you're just too confident, Tucker.
Well,
Just like Silence of the Lambs.
up next
Exactly.
Is Tanner. You gave it a 9.2. So
I did.
What's the thinking behind that one?
There is the pacing issue that I talked about that I don't think enough time is given to some Buffalo Bill stuff in comparison to the Hannibal Lecter stuff, even though the Hannibal Lecter stuff deserves every second that it's given. And I just have that one sort of glaring issue with it. And I took another 0.1 off because they tease us with saying the title of the film, but they never actually say it. So I took a 0.1 off.
I hope that's not true.
That's not true.
Okay, Abram, we're going down the list here. So Abram at 9.1, why did you give it that score?
I know I did the indefensible and put it 0.6 below Tucker's 9.7.
Oh my god! How could
Ultimately,
you hate this film?
I'm giving you the breathing room, Abram, to give some closing thoughts.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think that where the difference between Tucker's love of the film and mine is not too far. My big secret that I held towards the end this is my favorite film we've watched for Quest.
Oh wow!
By a significant margin, but I don't think it's the best film, and that's why I wear the I don't have a hat to put on, but I wear the Quest the fucking objective Mr. Man hat sometimes, right? And I think that the film does have a couple issues which hold it back for me. I think that it gets a little bit too convenient in that third act again, and that just takes me out of the experience just a little bit. But that is inconsequential in terms of the heights that the film has between the performances, between the execution, between just how fun it is. It's really it's a film so gross I should hate it because like Timo, I don't like horror stuff. I don't like being scared. I don't like yucky things. These guys want me to watch Saw. I would sooner die. But the fact of the matter is the way this material is presented feels so inventive and fun. It almost feels like Jaws. It feels like watching a Spielberg film sometimes. The ways that it manages to be kind of aloof and interesting in the face of really depraved material. It's really an excellent example of how to have nuance to your tone, and for me, it just works so well. I really love this film.
And finally, at the lowest, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10.0. I like the film on the whole. That's a positive score for me. A couple things here and there, I found not so pleasing, I guess, to me. While the horror elements and all that kind of stuff worked for me, the kind of lack of much broader thematic material in the film, and just that, like, while I was engrossed in the film, I was not enjoying watching it. And that is a thing, I could put on the objective hat too, and I look at the film and I see all the great stuff, and there are shots where I'm like, oh, I love this shot, it's amazing. Oh, I love how this is being acted. And then like the story material and whatnot makes me go like, I want to turn this movie off right now. I don't want to watch this movie anymore. And if I were seeing it in a theater, you just sit right through it, and it would be that kind of experience. It's just how I really experience horror, media. It's not my favorite genre ever, so that's how it is. But there we go. That's the score, 9.1, landing at place number 6. So there you go. Silence of the Lambs.
There you have it.
Cracking that top. I'm liking it.
We made it without a single Miggs joke, so I think we deserve an award
thank
for
God.
that.
Ooh.
Come.
Nice.
There you go.
Hey, we did it.
Award,
everyone.
award rescinded.
Well done.
All right, let's take a look at that spin wheel. Why don't we?
Okay.
All right, Tanner. Are you
I'm
ready?
ready.
Roll
ready.
vocal chords.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital or is it unreal? Wheel, what's your deal?
And Wheel's deal is the number 40. Look at that. Number 40.
Number 40. Oh, yeah.
That's pretty. That's going to be sending us
no.
back to the past. We are heading away. Man, look at that. Number 40. What?
Okay. Tucker, what do
There
we
you
got?
go. You finally got it pulled up. All
What
right.
do we got?
We're looking at finally, and we have been long overdue for an older movie here.
Oh boy.
Number 40 brings us all the way back to the 40s.
Oh.
With a movie directed by Laurence Olivier, who you might be familiar with. He's a famous guy, and he's also starring Laurence Olivier.
Okay.
This is, unfortunately for me, a Shakespeare adaptation. We are watching Hamlet.
Ah. To be or not to be? That is the question.
God damn it.
We were getting a little bit too lucky. Ben-Hur, Schindler's List, Lawrence of Arabia, Silence of the Lambs. We had to get a clunker like this eventually.
Hey, let's not toss out our thoughts too early. Maybe this very by the numbers period piece Shakespeare adaptation will do something a little different. Huh?
2.5 hours long.
For an adaptation of Hamlet, that is a feat. I am looking forward to see how they got Hamlet down into 2.5 hours. Actually,
I like Hamlet. I will say.
I can't wait to see him hold the skull.
We gotta. I'm gonna find a skull of my own to hold. Maybe this one.
I'm doing it right now
as I grab my head.
Oh my god. Oh, we didn't even acknowledge Abram shaved his head like a real psychopath.
Yeah, I did do that. That's true. I'm in Florida. It's very hot. I was like, I'm tired of it. I'm always futzing with my hair. I'm sure the Quest viewers notice.
Yep.
So just like it's just gone now.
Yeah. If there's anything about the Quest viewers, is they're very attentive and they're very great.
Yes.
Okay.
That's true. We love you guys.
Well, we're gonna jump in to Hamlet next week. I hope you guys will join us. Maybe you'll watch along with it. It's the 1948 version. Laurence Olivier. We are in for it. Shakespeare, baby. To be or not to be? We will try to answer that question next time on the Quest for the Bestest. See you then. Peace.
Episode 39. Can you believe it, lads?
That's very many episodes. That is very awesome.
I can believe it. Abram, you remember the neighbor?
I do, yes.
So we've got a neighbor, and you'll be a fan of this guy.
Yeah.
He sells bass
car sound system.
Subwoofers.
Aftermarket car sound system.
Oh, I put one of those in my Volvo.
Now he has the most powerful one I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing in his car, and when he drives by our house, the entire thing shakes.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so fucking cool.
It's possibly the single worst thing a neighbor could do. I mean, second to like actual murder.
That's so cool.
Like you'll be trying to like have a conversation, this motherfucker rolls by and you just can't, and like shit just starts rattling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not funny. It sucks.
Yeah, that's really hilarious. I really like that.